Is it a rental crisis? Let's talk about it right now.
I'm the ringleader, so listen up.
Morning.
Oh, yeah.
Good, how are you?
Good. What a beautiful morning. 7 degrees this morning, 7.7 degrees.
I know, I got dressed, I did my makeup sitting on the floor next to the heater because it was so cold.
Killer. That wind's incredible.
I know. Whole week
Now,
of it
Jess,
ahead.
oh, yeah. I don't mind it with the blue skies, though. Now,
Yeah,
Jess, we were talking about this morning about the current rental situation in Sydney, how it is performing, why it is performing like that, what is the future of the rental market, what people are doing, how to better prepare yourself for it, I think, most importantly. But there's a lot of questions there. Where do you want to start?
Maybe with where we're at right now, there's currently the vacancy rate in Sydney is 1.1%, which means that out of all the properties, only 1.1% are available to be rented out. Normally, if it's below 3%, it's a landlord's market, which means it's easy to rent out your property. So 1.1% is very, very low.
What's doing it?
So a couple things. I think, firstly, the borders are opening up again. So we've had the influx of students kind of start to trickle back in.
Because we had a million people leave the country, so surely that would have had not a good effect on the rental market. Now it's them coming back. It's got to be a good effect.
Yeah, a good effect, but it also means it's a good effect for landlords. It means you can rent out your place. Plus, they've had a lot of landlords put on hold rent escalations over the last couple of years. So now they've escalated the prices and there's more people. So it's a great time to be a landlord, a very tricky time to be a tenant.
Yeah, right. I was also considering that if you look at the cost of building and developing a product like an apartment and injecting that into the marketplace, it's more expensive and almost not profitable now to build some new unit blocks.
Yeah.
Without those unit blocks being built, that's less rental accommodation hitting the market. So we're actually, as a city, we're used to a certain flow of the units coming online per year. I think it's a couple 100,000 units, whatever it is. But if that goes as that, Harry Triggerboff always talks about it, the biggest unit builder in Australia. He always talks about affordability, and he needs to keep building for Australians. Of course he does, but he needs to keep building for Australians in order to allow that affordability for rentals. So that's happening now as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think more like Northern Beaches focus, we talk about a tree change and a sea change. I think a lot of people moved during COVID, not necessarily being able to buy, but moved to rent for the same reasons. And that means the population has grown and the amount of units has stayed the same.
Yeah, right. Something also to consider, guys and girls out there. I'd love to know if you're watching today how you're seeing the rental market perform in your particular areas. But I think something that's also important about these rental markets is the sentiment of an investor. As an investor, you may think that the market's peaked and now's the right time to sell because you were going to do it the last couple of years anyway. Now it's ready for the picking. And as an investor, you may think buying in this market, there's not too much capital growth next year, 2 or 3, because the market's peaked the last couple of years. So probably less of a reason for an investor to get into the market, and a good reason for an investor to get out of the rental market, to sell their property that was rented out. But having said that, I'm very counterintuitive. That's why I think it's a genius time to buy as an investor.
For sure. And like I said too, you can put the rent a little bit higher than you normally would. There hasn't been escalations in a little while, and also when demand is high, people are willing to pay more. Like we rented out in April 72 properties in a month. That's 2 a day.
What a monster.
Yeah.
That we would have wanted more properties than any other agency on the Northern Beaches. Well, we do. But that's a big figure.
Huge number. And this, just talking about Sydney as well, Sydney has one of the higher vacancy rates. So this is across all of Australia. In Brisbane, it's 0.8%. Darwin, I think, was 0.4%. So it's nationwide that this same thing is happening. So no matter where you're watching from.
All right, and then now I think let's jump. So we're talking from a landlord. I guess your rents are going up, or your interest rates have gone up anyway. I also think from a lending perspective, it seems loans are a little bit harder to obtain now with interest rates going up. So that means it's going to be less. That's going to knock out a percentile of people that can get a loan for an investment property. So they simply won't get an investment property. What does it mean for tenants? How can tenants fight this war?
So I think for tenants, generally what's been happening, you go to the first open home, there's heaps of people there. Someone's already submitted an application before they viewed the property and they're just viewing it to tick a box. So I think making your application stand out as much as possible is a good way to start. The first thing is really simple, but no spelling mistakes until in every section. I think about half of applications, they get looked over because they've missed sections. And if you have an application that's perfect and one that's half complete, which one are you going to go with? It's a simple thing.
Yeah, I think making it easy for the property manager is going to be key. So when they can, when it's clear and easy to read, filled out correctly, and they can skim and go, yep, tick, yep, tick, yep, tick, yep, tick, there's more inclined that the application is going to fly.
Yeah. And also the other thing with that, so the property manager will call the references that you've put on, letting the references know ahead of time. Because there's nothing worse than calling the reference and they're like, huh, what are you talking about? If they know the call's coming, again, it just makes it easier for your application to get promptly on.
Shows you're organised as a tenant.
Yeah.
More chance of a smoother reference and a quality reference, because half the conversation is not going to be IDing the situation and the person. The whole conversation is going to talk about how good that person is.
Yeah.
So I never thought of that. That's a good one.
The other thing too, I thought this was a really good idea. I was talking to a family a couple of weeks ago, and they're looking for a bedroom house, and they were having some issues with their application because they're quite a big family. And I told them, take a photo of the family and put it into the application. Just because I think sometimes when you put a face to the name, the property manager is a human. And sometimes I'll go, oh, they've really put in effort. Look at them. They look like a nice family. And it might just kind of give you that bit of an edge. Same with having a pet. You take a photo of the pet and put it in.
Look, as much as you don't like to admit it, you're judging people on how they look on a photo. We're always checking out the driver's license.
Yeah.
As an agent checking out a tenant, you just do. And it's not a vanity thing. It's just, I guess you just, who is this person? You look at the driver's license that they put on, you look at the photo, you go, okay. So I don't know about you, but my driver's photo is rubbish. And I think more than half of us have a driver's photo. So to support that with a photo like you're suggesting, it's in the light that, you want to be. Does the agents look on social media for that person?
Sometimes, yes. However, in saying that, I think at the moment now, because there's so many applications, I don't think they need to every time, because there's usually one standout that's a paper standout. But if you have a photo or something a bit different, it might make you that person instead, rather than going to the effort to go through all the social media when there's so many applications. Yeah,
got it. So tips to tenants. Put a photo in there, fill it out properly. If you're short on income and you're maybe a bit younger, add a pro. So, for instance, if add mum and dad, add a boss, had a good friend that's got a good job onto the application, yes, you are going to bind that person into the lease temporarily, but you can always take them off a year or two later. So if you think of it from an owner's perspective, as an owner's perspective, they are thinking, hang on a sec, these two kids are 18 years of age, 19 years of age, but their dad's, an accountant, and he's going to go on the lease as well. Now I've got 3 verifications of income. Now I feel safe. After the 18-year-olds prove themselves after a year or 2, they can apply to take that off that application, off that lease, and then the landlord feels pretty comfy because the 18-year-old's been paying on time. They've looked after the property, and off they go. Oh, look, we've got Steve Carrick in the UK. Look at that. Listening live from his bed in the UK. How are you, Steve? One of the best guys in the real estate industry. Legend.
Love it. Something I would do as well is I'd get, so you know how we talked about calling the references, along with having your parents kind of helping you, I would also get someone, whether that be your boss or if you do have a former property manager, to write a letter and then put it in. Then they don't even have to make the call. It also was really important during COVID for the financial security element, because if you had a letter from the employer just saying the job is secure, we're continuing to work, it might also give a bit more comfort. And then again, you stand out because you're making less work for the property manager. They don't necessarily have to make that call. There's a letter already in there. It's a tick already.
It's great bum covering for a property manager. Mm-hmm. It just covers their bum. So when it's like, did you check the reference? Of course I did. There it is. Rather than actually having to, I did a call and I called 3 times and I spoke to who did you speak to and what do they say? That letter's great. But agents won't give out a letter normally. So if you've got a letter as a tenant from an agent as a reference, or from your accountant or solicitor, or if you've got some distinguished person that can give you a letter of reference, that's going to go a long, long way because they're a bit more of a rare animal. We don't like to, as an agency, give it out because it basically, if the tenant, because the tenant's normally looking for a property before they've left their tenancy, so we can't give them a letter saying they're a wonderful tenant because they haven't moved out, paid everything and cleaned the property. We don't know. So it's hard to give a written, because a written fixed reference is fixed in time. So we want it to be a moving target clause, so you know what they're like when they moved out. So written ones are good if you get them as a tenant. Rare.
Also, as a tenant though, you never know unless you ask the question. Like, you might as well ask, what's the worst they'll do? They'll say no, and then that's okay. You ask your boss to do one instead.
That's it.
Yeah.
So rental crisis, Jess, is that all we got for today? You said we're done?
I think so. Just one other tip would be, when you're coming in to apply to a property, apply before you view. You can't get you can't get the property until you viewed it. But have the application already sitting in the property manager's inbox, walk in, view it, and then say yes or no if you want to proceed. And that way it saves the time element. No one's going to beat you after you viewed the property.
That's silky smooth. Mm-hmm. That's silky smooth approach. But do you reckon it's going to ease up this rental crisis anytime soon?
Sorry, what'd you say?
Do you reckon the rental crisis is going to ease up anytime soon? Or do you reckon this is around for a while?
I think it's going to be around for a while, especially with how difficult it is getting resources in for construction, with like natural disaster, with floods. There's a lot of rebuilding that needs to be done, and our population keeps growing.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it's so for landlords, it's looking good with rents going up.
Yeah.
And so, just to answer Paul's question, how bad is the rental crisis? Like, is it something to worry about for prospective tenants? Is it something to cheer about for landlords, or is it just moving a little bit where we're starting to see it go in a direction?
think it depends what area in Sydney you're in and what you're looking for. I think it's very difficult if you're someone looking for a 3 or 4 bedroom house. It can be more difficult if you have a pet and in different areas of Sydney. But I think it's just something to be mindful of if you're going to start looking for a property to rent out.
And that's a show. Jespresso, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
And we'll everyone have a beautiful day. Enjoy this beautiful weather. And the tenant rental crisis has started. Hopefully it won't be too deep, but it's good news and bad news. It's just more turbulence for everyone, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, so all right, take care.
Bye.
See you, bye.